I've been on situations got me falling down. What should I do? The day's full of questions, there's no answers or suggestions. So, who do I turn to? You can call on Jennie B. You can say just what you mean. It's so nice. It's so nice. You can call on Jennie B. You can talk about anything in this life. The fabric of life. You can call on Jennie B. You can say just what you mean. It's so nice. It's so nice. You can call on Jennie B. You can talk about anything in this life.
Good evening, and good evening. I am your host, Miss Jennie B, and you have tuned in to another episode of The Fabric of Life. I appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in tonight. If you want to join in the conversation, the call-in number is 248-854-9850. Thank you. We do have Mr. Miles Dixon, station engineer, on the ones and twos tonight. I appreciate him so dearly. All right. So here on The Fabric of Life, you all know that our conversations are transparent. We love everything to be open and organic. So we love each and every one of you to join the conversation. I have a very, very, very special guest with me tonight. None other than Mr. TJ Hempfield. Let's give him a round of applause. So I want to share, how are you doing, Mr. Hempfield, tonight before I read your bio?
Oh, hold on.
Thanks.
There we go. Go ahead.
How are you doing tonight? All right, now we can hear you.
Good. I'm doing great. Thank you for asking.
Thank you. So I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to join me on the studio tonight. So I want to share a little bit of information about you. Some of you know Mr. Hempfield. If you ever heard of the wonderful play Peerless Times, this is the person, one and only. He wrote this play in 1990. It is the longest running annual show in the history of the Motor City. So, yes, let's give him a round of applause for that, because that show is still a staple in our city, and people still talk about that show. One of the questions I want to ask you, Mr. Hempfield, before we get started. So here, I always start out with a quote, and you just give me your natural reaction to that quote. And tonight's topic is making history in your own community. So the quote for tonight is, "Your future is not tomorrow. The future is what you are creating." So what are your thoughts about that, Mr. Hempfield?
Well, first of all, I like that quote because it indicates activity. It says to me, don't wait for tomorrow. Tomorrow is not guaranteed.
Exactly.
And everything that we see today is something that someone thought of weeks ago, months ago, years ago. So it's important to stay busy now, and whatever dreams you have, go forward today. Everything that you do today should be leading towards your dreams. I like to think of it like this. Every place I go, every person I meet, everything I'm involved in gets better when I'm around it.
I like that. Say that again for the listening audience. That last statement you just said.
Every place I go, every person I meet, every situation I'm in just gets better when I'm around it.
Awesome. I love that. Now, if anybody knows, if you follow my daily motivations with Jennie B, I give a quote, and I love thought-provoking quotes. So the quote you just gave us was very, very thought-provoking. So I'm gonna have to write that one down. I'll make sure I give you your credit though. So let's share some of the things that you've graced our community with. Tonight, we're talking about making history in your own community. And Mr. Hempfield has definitely made history in his community, around his community. You can see his work in some of the shows called Men Can't Be Dogs, which he directed, and it was a national touring show. Some of the actors and actresses that he's worked with: Tommy Ford, Shirley Murdoch, Clifton Powell, Christian Keys, just to name a few. Love Won't Let Me Wait, which is starring on Fox, which includes actors of Clifton Powell and Lenny Williams. Now, these are just a few things, but he has a myriad of work, and he continues to write, I'm sure, and he continues to share his gift with the world. One of the things that I didn't know, as I was reading your bio, is that you have a theater where you teach at Commonwealth Community Development Academy, where you nurture and mentor future actors and writers. So that's something that I was very, very excited to learn, because I definitely want to sign up for class.
Well, we hope to get that started again as soon as we get some relief from this coronavirus business.
Okay.
Maybe sometime this summer.
Okay.
Great to get that going again.
Well, I'll definitely be interested. I know there's a lot of people out there that would also be interested in taking your courses. What are your thoughts of, you brought up the conversation of COVID. What I'm seeing now across a lot of platforms, that a lot of companies are offering acting classes on Zoom and other platforms. So what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think the Zoom classes are good, particularly for people who are serious. I mean,
Okay.
the biggest issue I think that we're struggling with today is in the community of our children, because Zoom classes, they're something we're relegated to right now. But the
Right.
reality is that they are rather difficult for kids to follow, because children get distracted so easily
Yes,
from
they
other
do.
siblings, other family members that may be at home. And quite frankly, I think they miss the teacher walking around, checking their workout and that sort of thing. So, but Zoom, on the other hand, is a blessing, because it allows us all to remain intact, or at least remain in contact with each other. So it has its benefits, so I certainly would not speak negatively about it. It's very positive for me, but there are some things that could certainly be better.
Okay. Now, I have heard of some other companies, like with the writing classes, they're starting to open back up. They're starting to offer them, but they've reduced their class size to accommodate for the CDC guidelines. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think it's necessary for that to happen, because the number one priority is that we have to make sure that we remain safe.
Right.
It's not going to do us much good if we're not here, but we have to certainly consider the safety aspect of coming back together. But certainly those kinds of classes, they're still viable. They're still they still can be a very positive element of growing and moving forward. Writing is a huge enjoyment for a lot of people. Some people are not that much into writing. But if you think about it, all of the things that we, for the most part, see on TV in terms of movies and shows, all of these activities require writers. So
Exactly.
we're always going to need writers, and good writers at that.
And that is a great transition to my next question, because I wanted to ask you, what were the 5 top challenges you experienced when you first started out as a playwright and writing your first play?
Well, that's a great question. I think the first challenge was to try to get everyone else to believe in the vision that God had given me. I remember very plainly telling people at my church, we're gonna go to the Fisher
Okay.
Theater. We're gonna do the Fisher Theater, and people looked at me like I was crazy.
Okay.
So I think the biggest challenge is getting people to believe in your vision, because it's difficult to do this kind of business by yourself.
Yes.
I run into a lot of playwrights who embark upon doing productions, and they just take on almost every aspect of the show. It's so big. You're talking advertising, producing, bringing actors together, directing, all of that sort of stuff, and it's a community of people in order to make a production successful.
I totally agree with that. And I think that's the same thing with anything that you're doing. You have to find a good team. So what are some of the tips or tools or strategies that you put in place to develop yourself a great team?
Well, first of all, just again, looking for someone who is kind of like me, kind of like myself, a visionary, someone who really, really wants to get their feet wet and do something great. So you have to find people who are effervescent in their spirit, their personality,
Mm-hmm.
If you find people who are too nonchalant or reticent, laid back,
Right.
that'll never work.
Mm-hmm.
Not in the business of theater
Mm-hmm.
or the business of producing movies. You need people
Mm-hmm.
who are energetic and
Yes.
people who are dynamic and who can get the job done. So you have to look for people who are sharp in that
Okay.
sense. And
Okay.
if they don't have a lot of skills in terms of the business itself, they've got to at least be like a sponge and just
Mm-hmm.
soak up everything you say instead of challenging you. You get a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people, that like to challenge you. Well, I think the color I think the light should be this way. I think that, and the first thing that's entering my mind is that, I'm trying to figure out now who is the director here. But
Exactly.
so you have to. I mean, you can give suggestions. I'm not saying that I'm inflexible or anything like that, because
Mm-hmm.
anybody who's ever worked with me knows that I will listen.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, we got to move forward. So you need people who are, in terms of their movement and their
Mm-hmm.
personality, they flow in juxtaposition to so that you can get
Yes.
the job done.
One of the things that my grandmother used to always tell me growing up, she used to always say, you have to have a teachable and a coachable spirit and always be willing to learn. Because when people act like they know everything, be afraid of them because none of us know everything. And so to that point, the next question I want to ask you is, what inspires you to write? When you're preparing to write material, whether it's for plays, film, TV, what inspires you to produce the material that you're producing?
I think the biggest thing that inspires me is the thought of people enjoying themselves in a space, a place. You take your wife out, you take your girlfriend out, your boyfriend, whatever. And just the thought of seeing somebody's eyes light up at what they see on stage, somebody's heart melt at what they hear in a particular song, or the sequence of plays and scenes that lead to a catharsis or whatever. Just the thought of seeing all that and hearing it and experiencing that. So many times I've sat in the back of the auditorium, all the way in the back, and I get a chance to look at the audience and see their reactions to the various scenes. And when I see those reactions, man, it just keeps me going. It just thrills me to see that something that I did has caused someone to be able to enjoy a particular moment. Because life is tough, and people
It
need
is.
to be able to get away and experience things that are positive, things that lift them up, and things that are thought provoking. So
Totally.
that's my biggest inspiration.
Okay. I totally agree with that. We all need something to give us some type of motivation and inspiration. And your work has definitely done that. It is still doing that for our community. You guys, if you're just tuning in, you're tuning in to The Fabric of Life with Jennie B. And my guest tonight is Mr. TJ Hemphill, the playwright, film director, and TV director and writer. And if you would like to call in and join the discussion, our call-in number is 248-854-9850 if you would like to ask him questions on tonight. I truly appreciate his presence. So my next question I want to ask you is, what is the best time for you to write?
That's an interesting question. It sort of depends on what I'm writing.
Okay.
Let me put it to you this way. If I'm actually writing the dialogue to a play,
Okay.
it's probably best for me to do it when I'm really alert, which is probably more in the afternoon or whatever. But I have spent many, many days at Belle Isle or some other place,
Okay.
seen it, and there are not people who are, you don't hear a lot of noise, that sort of thing, and so that's the best time to do writing as far as dialogue. Now, when it comes to writing music, because I write all the music for my productions, when it comes to doing the music, I'm better off at night. I don't know why, but I remember when I wrote the theme song for Peerless Times, "Oh What Love." I wrote it in the middle of the night, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and by the time I finished with the song, I was just in tears all the way through. And the crazy thing is that anybody who's ever been to the play and they hear that song, that's exactly what it invokes. It invokes those tears and emotions. And so I like to think that somehow or another God infused, his spirit into me and my spirit into the music, and the rest is history.
Well, I'm sure he has, because that's evident in your work, that God has definitely infused his spirit in you as you continue to display the vast creative work that you're displaying across the world. If there was a young person listening right now or may watch this later, and I work for Detroit Employment Solutions, and one of the agencies we work with is Making It Happen. And it's a group that teaches young people about audio and visual production. So if you had to share a word of advice to a young person, because I noticed in your bio, you came for the love of arts at a young age. What advice would you give those young people?
I think, I think that it's a very, the answer probably is more comprehensive than detailed in the sense of one specific thing.
Okay.
But I think you have to just, first of all, believe in yourself. Believe in what God has told you. Because the one thing that I'd like to share and say is that when God gives you a vision, he not only gives you the vision, but he also gives you provision. And he not only gives you provision, but he gives you the passion that is required to get the job done. See, that's the reason why a lot of people will start a production or start something and they fall off. They just end in it when the going gets tough, or when people start saying, oh, you can't do that. That's never going to work. But when God gives you something, you've got to believe and know that he also gives you the passion. Passion will keep you moving. Passion will tell you yes when everybody else says no. And
that's true.
God cannot ignore it, and he usually doesn't. So just remember that God is on your side, and that if you continue, and even if you listen, I know not everyone necessarily may be a Christian or have that kind of faith in God, but if you just believe in yourself and believe in the things that's in your heart and go after it, that would be my suggestion. Just don't overlook anything. Too many times people overlook things. They want to jump from being a startup writer to being a director. Okay, you got to let it build and get it in sequential order. So that you don't miss any steps.
You have a caller.
We have a caller on the air. Caller, you have just tuned in with Fabric of Life. Give us your name and share your question.
Hi, my name is Chanel. I am so excited to know that you are interviewing Mr. TJ Hempfield. My question for you, Mr. Hempfield, is as a person who came up in the church singing and would go to all of your plays, I noticed that there isn't a soundtrack for Peerless Times. Can we please get one? Please.
Actually, there is a soundtrack. We just have not been producing that track for sale. But there is a soundtrack, and I'm sure that if you provide your information to our hosts tonight, we might be able to get a soundtrack to you.
Thank you.
Wow, that is awesome. I want a copy too.
I called in. So as you continue to go on and continue to produce plays, I hope you continue to write the music. The music for me, and when I'm watching those plays, it really embeds like a tattoo, if you will, of that scene when I hear your songs, and it sticks with me. So I just hope you continue to do that, because a lot of playwriters don't recognize how much the music means behind those scenes to the people that are watching and listening. But I thank you.
Well, you kind of hit things right on the head, because sometimes people will put music into a play or a scene and just kind of throw it in there. But you really have to write music and use music that actually perpetuates the scene itself. That's why for me, I found it better for me to write my own music. Now I realize that not everyone is a composer, but you can find a composer who can generate music for your scenes if you're writing a play and you're not a composer. I learned a long time ago, I go to every Broadway show I possibly can. And the one thing I notice about Broadway shows, their music so coincides with their scenes. I mean, they just simply They do it so well. And I asked God a long time ago, I said, Lord, what makes a classic? What makes a song a classic? And I'm
Wow.
so glad that he responded to me in that, because the music in Peerless Times, not because I wrote it, but the music in it has lasted for 20 some odd years and
Wow.
continues to inspire. I have had so many singers, whether it's Regina Bell or Tim Bowman,
Hmm.
or Aaron Clark Sheard or Vicki Winans or whoever it might, and they just marvel at the music and of Peerless Times. And so I'm grateful, but music is really, really important to your plays if you have a play that involves music. Now, of course, some plays are just dramas and there is no particular music or song that goes along with it. Those might be a little tougher to do,
Okay.
but they can be done, and they can be done very well. We see it all the time.
Mr. Hemphill, have
Well,
you
thank you for
also?
taking my call, Jenny.
Oh,
All
you're
right.
welcome, Janelle. We thank you for calling in tonight, and I'll definitely get your information so you can get the copy of that soundtrack. You're welcome. So, Mr. Hemphill, have you also written music for any of the TV or film productions that you've written?
Well, all of the plays that I've done,
Mm-hmm.
I have written music or wrote music for those shows,
Okay.
all of them, but they all have not been recorded in
Okay.
terms of the soundtrack,
Okay.
like Peerless Times. Peerless Times is the only production that has a full soundtrack. The
Okay.
others, the music is stored. We do have the music. I just haven't
Mm-hmm.
put it in a soundtrack form for
Okay.
sale or for dissemination, but it's there. So again, like I said, I started playing piano when I was 9 years old, and and my mother, bless her heart, she was the one who got me started. She was such a great singer and a piano player, and I was inspired by her. Just listening and watching her sing and play, it thrilled me. And then years ago, I had a friend of mine who was part of the theater productions at Wayne State University, and she was in a show called Pal Joey. And I went to see Pal Joey at the Bonsdale Theater there on Woodward, and I was absolutely floored by the lights, by the costumes, by the music, and all of that just stuck with me. And then, again, like I said, I just got bitten. So,
I have. I want to find out, like, was the transition from theater to film? Did you find that to be a challenge, or was that an easy transition?
well, for me, the transition was not so easy.
Okay.
Primarily because my two productions that have been filmed, All Men Can Be Dogs, and Love Won't Let Me Wait. Unfortunately, the producers wanted to use Hollywood directors to direct my work, and I personally thought they missed some great opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
It's no question that film is different from stage,
Right.
but I still feel like they missed some opportunities, that
Okay.
could have made the production stronger. And so it's difficult for me. I got a chance to direct most of the actors, Vivica Fox and others, Tommy Ford, people like that. But um, because I was working also with their directors and their producers, uh, the work was more difficult. That's why I do admire so much Tyler Perry and his work, because he has full hand, 100%. Things are going to go his way, period. So,
Exactly.
but Tyler, people often ask me, they say, well, how come you're not as far or as successful as Tyler? Well, you have to ask God that question. But one thing I do know is that Tyler became a star in his own productions, and that
Right.
was star power. Boy, he saved himself a lot of money. When you think about all the stars that I've had to put in my shows, whether it's Vivica Fox or Tommy Ford or Debo, all those people, those people cost a lot of money. But with Tyler, he was blessed to be his own star. So, um, that saved him a lot of money, and he was able to put that into his productions, and it paid off for him handsomely. And when you combine that with his general talent as such, it just was a winner, So I salute him. But the going was a little tough going from theater to film.
That's awesome. That's actually leading into my next question because I wanted to know, like, what are your 3 top film writers, film, TV productions, or producers or writers that you look up to or that have helped you add to your work?
Well, I've often admired the producers and directors who have done some of these major film projects, whether it's the Titanic, movies like that. But to be quite honest with you, I'd like to give some accolades and some adulations to a good friend of mine who I think just did a fabulous job this past Christmas season, and that's my friend David Telbert. Dave Telbert did a film that he started working on years ago, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, the title is Jingle Jangle or something like that. But I'm telling you that everything about that film, for me, was just right on the money. The choreography, the costumes, the cinematography, just the storyline, everything. And I just thought that so I just look up to him at this point. He's a buddy of mine. I'm a little older than he. We're not too far apart, as you can tell by the gray beard. But
well, gray is in. Gray is in right now. So
that's what they say, But I salute him in his efforts because he's worked so hard to get where he is. And, anybody can tell you that in order to produce that kind of quality, yes, it takes talent in terms of the cast. It takes vision in terms of the writer, director. But it also takes money to put all those elements together. And when we start coming together as a community of people, when we finally decide, hey, let's put our money behind this person or that person or whatever, and let's make something happen, we can become the Motown of theater and film all over again. But you got to have people who believe in the young folks who are coming behind. That's why I'm willing to help wherever I can. Any young person out there that's trying to get something done, and I'm willing to help because that's what's going to pay off at the end of the day, helping people.
I totally agree. I truly believe in giving back. We have a caller on the air. Caller, you're on the air with the Fabric of Life.
Yes, ma'am. You're doing a great job. I have a question for you, sir.
What's your name, sir?
Sean.
Thank you, Sean. Go ahead with your question.
Okay. If you had an opportunity, sir, and Tyler Perry offered you a job, would you go work for his studio or his company, sir?
I would. I'd be like a rejuvenated 21-year-old. I would forget all about the fact that I'm a lot older than that, but I'd be like a kid in a candy store or Christmas morning. No, I think that what Tyler's doing down there in Atlanta is fabulous, and anybody who has the opportunity to work with him, to learn the trade, you just need to jump on that. It doesn't come every day. I have 2 twin boys. They are 26 years old, and they just they walked into Lemuel Plummer, and I don't know if you know Lemuel Plummer, but he's the young man who produced the Preachers of Detroit, Preachers of LA,
yes,
and a couple
I
of
know who he is. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he hired them right on the spot to help him in his productions, and they called me and asked me about it. I said, hey, go for it. And they are in Atlanta right now filming shows and learning the business. So, yeah, to answer your question, Sean, I would certainly, even at this juncture in my life, I'd pick up and go down there and do whatever I can to help him achieve his goals. And because it's only going to pay off for me in the long run. And then, you know what? Real lovers of film and theater, we do it just because we love doing it. And if we can make a little money doing it, then that's all the more better.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for that question, Sean. We appreciate you calling in on tonight. You guys, if you're just tuning in, you're on with the Fabric of Life. I am your host, Miss Jennie B. The call-in number is 248-854-9850. We have just about a couple of minutes left, Mr. Hempfield, but I did want you to share